bienvenidos sean todes, todas, todos ustedes a esta segunda sesión de Punto de Vista, el encuentro de nuevas narrativas. En el marco del Ficunam estamos muy contentos de recibirlos a todos ustedes aquí en el MUAC presencialmente y también a todos los que nos acompañan en streaming. Es una mesa llena de talento, de creatividad, sensibilidad particular, atravesada por un lugar de origen, por un deseo de liberación del ser y por el retrato desde la piel. Cine de la Liberación, Dislocaciones Binarias y la Diáspora Negra es el título de nuestra mesa de hoy y va a ser moderada por Maximiliano CRUZ, que es director artístico de Ficunam. Es el artífice detrás de toda la curaduría de este festival que hemos disfrutado muchísimo hasta el momento. No se han dejado de repetir que la programación de este año es espectacular. Muchas gracias, Maximiliano, por eso. Y bueno, además de ser el director artístico de Ficunam, tiene una larga trayectoria como programador, como curador y distribuidor. Es, digamos, la cabeza detrás de Interior 13, que ha también dado la posibilidad de ver otro tipo de cinematografías en nuestro país. Y dejo a Maximiliano que presente a nuestros invitados especiales del día de hoy. Muchísimas gracias.
When the Black Lives Matter protests began, you know, what was interesting to see was how this idea and the reality of Black life and Indigenous life came as a surprise for others. But for us, it was not a surprise. From there, you know, yes, while this was happening, we were writing Neptune Frost. And it's hard to say whether Neptune Frost would have been any different had those protests not occurred, because our experience remains our experience, whether it is acknowledged by the public or not. Therefore, you know, we made a film that responds to what we want to see, the stories we want to explore, the faces we want to see, the narratives that are dear to us, and I guess in some sense breaking the boundaries that we wanted to break. And I think that we would have gone this direction regardless. In fact, I know that because we started Neptune Frost before the Black Lives Matter movement went public. But Black lives mattered and Indigenous lives mattered to us for the entirety of our lives. And so we can applaud the public for realizing, you know, the importance of this movement, but it was a movement before it was acknowledged by the media.
The desire was to bring the audience into that, you know, into that new space, into that fight with us, and to show that it's possible to share narratives about Black lives in a new ways.
I echo the sentiments of Anisia and Saul, and I just want to say, I think the public is there. I think the audience is there. It's just the work is not being, you know, presented. And, you know, I feel that for me personally, making this film was actually an opportunity to engage with the work, engage with the people, engage with the thematics that are interesting to us in the way that we find it, you know, because like every time, you know, you're taking the camera and you're shooting something, there is a way that you're having a dialogue, not just with the person that's in front of you, but with the whole world, you know, with the world that surrounds it, with everything that sustains it. You know, and then and love in a way comes into mind, you know, because, you know, for me, like these are the people that I love to talk about. And when we speak about, you know, color space, it's about negotiating every single thing, the power, economics, you know, social, everything. It's a negotiation. And to be able to arrive to that frame, because it's troubling the frame, it's complicating the frame. And when you arrive to a frame, it comes to with a series of an incredible amount of dialogues that you're having constantly with what you're talking about. And me, and I feel, you know, Saul and Anisia also, they're talking about, you know, I mean, I'm talking about Ethiopia, for example, you know, and I don't even dare to say the continent, because even that, I feel that, for example, like the people that populate, you know, Faya Dayi, they're very specific ethnic groups within a country that embraces almost about over 80 ethnic groups themselves, with their own language, with their own dress, with their own spirituality, you know, just all of that. So I feel that the freedom, and it's such the freedom to negotiate all of those lines beyond those lines that have been delineated, be it by genre, be it by whatever, and finding your own space within that. I think I think that's why the public would respond to that, would respond to something that is very honest, something that he had a very honest dialogue with, you know? I think that's what it is, the honesty of the work, I think.
Yes, I have another question that has to do, to begin, I mean, touching like the process of you guys, the creative process, and has to do with production. I would like you to talk us a little bit about the main challenges that you had producing and financing your films, and maybe to give us your opinion if these challenges are related to the fact that your art and you guys confront like directly the establishment, or the white establishment actually.
Once again. Well, with Neptune Frost, I would say that in terms of production, what we faced was the first question. You know, once we had settled on the idea that our film, which is a science fiction musical, is a film, because it started as a theatrical idea. Which is different. If it was a musical for the stage, that would be different. But as a film, and we had producers that were interested, but of course the first question that a producer asks is, who's in it? And because we were interested in shooting in Rwanda with these, you know, our extraordinary Rwandan and Burundian cast, introducing new faces, you know, and also, you know, shooting a film not in English, but in the language that is spoken where it's shot, of course, we encountered, you know, a lot of pushback. The way that we decided that we would strategically approach it was by first approaching the public. And this is because oftentimes we know that what frustrates us in cinema, in the establishment, in the industry, it's not only us. We know that there are a lot of people who are interested in seeing something new, in exploring something new, and we also know that there are gatekeepers. And so we decided first to hold a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter and to approach the public with our idea for the film, and because we knew that we could bring them with us, and if we did, then private investors might respond to that excitement and go, okay, they're not alone. It's not just, their egocentric trip. There's actually a lot of people that are interested in something like this. And so that's the approach that we took. We held a Kickstarter campaign in 2018, explaining, the film. We had gone to shoot a sizzle reel in Rwanda beforehand, so that people would have, a short 3-minute trailer to look at. And we talked a bit about, we kind of confronted the issue head on. And with that, it engaged the public. And from that, there were people that saw that campaign and were inspired by it and said, I want to participate. I want to participate even more than what I'm capable of doing in this campaign. How can I be a part of this? And so that's pretty much how we confronted the hardship that we faced. Because yes, we did face hardship.
Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, as much as what Jessica was saying, in terms of before you what you put in a frame, it's the production side of it is also what you put in a frame, and so I think in these films what you see too is in the frame you also see the fight that was put into the production of this film, of this object, or of this expression. And it's true that with Neptune Frost and the themes of the film, somewhere, somehow, we knew that if we were telling that type of story, re-questioning the powers, re-questioning our position in that, in that society, and we will have to face it all along the way, right? It would start from the very beginning, which is the writing, which is the genre of film, which is everything from the moment we decided to do this film. And so it is true, for my part at least, that I had to beg for everything. I had to beg for a camera. I had to beg for people to be considered as, workers, and so forth, to be paid, because it's often the case that producer think that because it's on the continent and because it's that type of film, people may work for free making a film. We had to fight for everything. I wanted a camera that was a very high quality camera to film this story. I thought it was very important for sci-fi musical to have those. And again, it was a fight. Why don't you do it guerrilla style with a small camera? Why don't you, and so the film talks about that too, I think. And that's also something that I think is important to share with the public. And it's true that when people see the movie, they're like, how the hell did you do this, Because that question of neocolonialism and of how we produce movie in the industry is visible through the film. It's visible that it's something else, that we did it differently, that it's a fight. And so, yeah.
Gracias, Anisia.
Yeah.
You go, Jessica.
Again, I echo every single thing. I feel like I was, in that negotiating table. But I want to say, talking, about that neocolonialism reflecting itself in the art that is being made or in the work that is being made today, in a lot of the African productions. That's another thing that, well, to begin with, I feel that to make something is miraculous in the first place. To just seriously, begin and just finish that It is a miraculous, simply because, I mean, look, just, you know, take Faya Dayi. It took 10 years for me to make that film. Not because of, you know, a lot of it had to do with the fact that there was no funding for this type of thing. There was just no funding. And so for me, the process of this was a stop and go. I will work what I can, you know, save a little bit, go once a year, you know, and do what I can and come back, you know. That was my process. And I cannot tell you the kind of frustration that one goes through when it comes to the financing of a film. Another thing, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of the films that are being made in Africa, well, especially like documentaries, you will find people wearing every single hat. I'm the producer, director, just everything. Why? Because you have to. Because you have to. Because you have to. Because I personally, like, for example, in my case, I didn't really have, first of all, I wasn't shooting in Addis Ababa, which is the city. I was shooting away from that in the place where I grew up. So did I have money to hire someone, you know, to even bring it from the city? No. I was staying a lot of the times at my friend's house, you know, people that I grew up with, you know what I mean, that will give me a room so I can stay, so I can shoot. So I feel that, and not only that, that's one. Another is the way that you have to negotiate, or what that negotiating table looks like. Because, for example, I reached out, you know, to a few producers, and in most of these cases, I have to tell you, the type of condescension that you have to deal with is just ridiculous, you know? That's number one. Number two, there were all kinds of, and when I say condescension, is because this person who has never even been to anywhere close to where I'm shooting is giving me directions on how this film needs to be made, you know? Or even trying to tell me, for example, what is going to, okay, so where are the drug dealers? You know, what are we exposing? For some reason, we always have to expose something, you know, like the people, these Black people need to be exposed, you know? And where are the drug, there is no such thing. So I would have to invent drug dealers because, you know, chat, for example, it's a legal plant, you know? So a lot of things, and I just decided I didn't want to hear that. So what it turned out, on the other hand, is that I had a small camera. I just had to squeeze it for all I could, squeeze out of it. Do you know what I mean? So you start squeezing things like crazy, you know? I don't know, it definitely is an experience, but it's indignating, to say the least. It's an incredibly indignating sort of a conversation that happens, especially at the, you know, at the beginning part of creation. Why? Because there is no trust, there is no this, there is no that, and plus you perhaps are not talking about what those producers or, you know, gatekeepers or whatever it is that they want you to talk about. So I feel that, you know, for me personally, I decided, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna have to go at it, you know, on my own, and that's fine. But I'm gonna take every single creative liberty in order to negotiate every single thing. There is not one thing that I'm going to change. For the better or for worse, it doesn't matter. Because this thing is costing me my life, like literally. 10 years is a pretty long time.
Yes, while I'm listening to you guys, yesterday we were talking with some colleagues here in the festival about the privilege not only for filmmakers but also to audience, to access. This was in particular for experimental film, you know, for the creation and to the access to it. And I've been thinking about this concept of privilege while listening to you. And I wanted to ask you, Anisia, in particular, in Rwanda, for example, the artistic community or the filmmakers that could be there work, there's like a privileged community there. How your vision about it, or that's not a concept that is in your imaginary? Because here in Mexico, you know, in the film community and the creators, the majority, I mean, they do live in a privileged world, you know.
Part of our desire to make Neptune Frost in Rwanda was because the film scene, the directors and all of that is very new in Rwanda. There was no cinema in Rwanda before the 2000, not at all. Like, there is no directors, there is no film coming out of there. There is, you know, I think linked to the political situation before the 2000s, Rwanda never produced images about themselves. And then it went through a period where there were images about Rwanda, but not made by Rwandans. And then around the 2000s, an emerging scene of creative emerged out of nowhere. And that was made possible because of the small devices, right? Because of small cameras. And you suddenly started to see all type of films being made by people who were craving to see themselves and to tell their story, but at the same time that had, you know, no background in telling stories. So it was very free, very inventive, very interesting, and very beautiful. The only thing that really came from a tradition in terms of Rwanda storytelling is that Rwanda has a huge background in poetry, right? Since a very long time, it's really, you know, embedded in the society, so with language, poetry, and music. But image was like a new land to explore. And I met amazing, amazing young directors from, let's say, 2010, you know. And I also did some workshop with, you know, people over there, and a festival came about, and it was the first festival, etc., etc. So, no, it doesn't come from a place of privilege at all. To the contrary, it comes from a place of necessity, you know, by any means necessary, to be able to finally see ourselves by ourselves. And so, to make Neptune Frost in Kinyarwanda, for instance, to me, is very moving. Because you'll ask any Rwandans if they have seen movies in their own languages, and they will tell you, like, no. You know, it's not a lot, like maybe 2 or 3 films, you know. And that was also part of the fight in the production, is that we wanted to show how people really are also, how that those young artists and that emerging scene, amazing emerging scene in art, those kids speaks 5 languages on the regular. You know, it's like if we were here, we speak Spanish and then English and then, you know, whatever. And so we thought it was something beautiful and also very futuristic, very sci-fi, very appropriate to the technology themes in the film. And so, no, it's not from privilege, it's from necessity, and it's the desire to see ourselves in the future, you know.
And I guess that many of these people, these new talents that you mentioned, or some of them, you involved them in the film,
Yeah.
Because I know you've been telling me about some musicians.
Oh yeah, yeah. Every single person that is involved actually in the making of this film, from the crew and the talent actually, are all amazing, amazing artists in their own rights. So in the crew, for instance, the production designer is a very amazing, talented, 25 years old fashion designer from Rwanda called Cedric Mizero, who has a body of work that is like out of this world. And also we had the luck to get one of the most loved artists from out of Rwanda, called Cécile Karyebwa, who is like the Cesaria Evora of Rwanda, who is making her debut at 74 years old in our film. And you know, that's what I was talking about, like, it's also, making art is also, like, I think a testimony to the fact, to say that we were there for the other to know that we exist. And so her presence was like a gift to us, but also to everyone who will witness it. All of them. I don't know if you want to introduce more people. But
yeah, I mean, there's so many in our cast and crew who are also filmmakers who helped us with the translation. I'm thinking of Clementine, who helped with the translation. I'm thinking of Shange, who helped with the translation. Kivu, who helped with the translation. You mentioned Eric One Key. Kaya Free, the extraordinary Burundian rapper and activist. Trésor, who's a journalist and musician out of Burundi. We really...
Shirley Sheja, who plays Neptune, is also a musician, an extraordinary musician and DJ.
Some sort of dream team.
No, it is like it was like building a posse. it was like that. I think, people came and gravitated around that strong desire to build that world together.
Yeah.
And to tell that story, which was very important.
And that emerging scene that Anisia is referencing is super inspiring. Super inspiring, because the approach to art, to images, to sound, all of it is fresh, brand new, and I can't say that it's reactionary. It's really innovative. It's extremely innovative.
And I like that question because, like, I feel like when we're talking about production, etc., we are centering the debate around, the outside of this process. And what I like in Jessica's film, and where I feel close to what she's doing, is that at one point, like she said, the question is to do whatever if you are in those situations, you do what you want to do. And that is appealing, I think, to the people that are around or in the project, and gives a certain je ne sais quoi to the films that I can recognize in her film. That
we did too.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say something, with what Anisia was saying, is that zest at the end of the day that you're being left with, and you're gonna do or die, right? You're gonna do or die, and also it's sort of like when I say, I didn't have the money to hire this, that, or to have a camera or lights or this or anything. What I didn't have, the community made up for it, because I'm not there by myself. I am here with a community of people that definitely want to, rally for you. They're there, and it just becomes like a communal work. I had someone helping me with a boom. It doesn't matter if we're like in the big market, whatever. Somebody's gonna come around and he's gonna hold on, or she's gonna hold on the boom. It doesn't matter who it is. Just people understand when you're trying to make something. They just want to lend you a hand. And so for that, I have to say what I didn't have, of money, what I didn't have about equipment, what all of the lacks or whatever, the community made up for it. And it's because of that, that I was able to make the film. And as a segue to language, I feel that one of the things that for me was so important also was the language in which I was going to speak, cinematically speaking. That's exactly where that very specific way of expressing was going to come. I don't want to be, like Saul was saying, you said something about being reactionary, but being innovative, So I really, that really resonates a lot, because I wanted to, more than, like, I don't feel like I was like innovative or anything like that. But what I really truly feel was that when it comes to language, I wanted the language, the architecture of the film to come directly from the place. If this place was to speak, what kind of way would it look like? If, so this is beyond anything else. And for that, I feel that truly looking at the social architecture, the political architecture, just the economic architecture, and the spiritual architecture. I feel like all of those things, were in a way the kind of negotiating that I was doing in terms of language. How do I want this to come? How do I want this to be expressed? And also languages, very specific language. The language that is being spoken in my film is Oromo and Harari. I grew up listening to 4 languages: Somali, Oromo, Harari, Amharic. I went to school in Amharic, but the Oromo and the Harari are very specifically spoken in the farms and in the walled city. I wanted that language to reverberate throughout, because then, it wouldn't make sense to do it in any other way. But just to be able to enunciate that, to be able to present that for me was just super important. Oromo is my grandmother's language. I never learned it, So it was a way of, like Anisia was saying, to say we're here. It's, for me, that was also that. To create that presence. Yeah.
Gracias, Jessica. What about you?
Well, yeah, okay, there's so many layers and ways in which we can talk about language, because of course, what Anisia and Jessica have in common in this visual language of which is, highly poetic, is visible in this work. And then there's also the spoken language, the written language, the poetry. For me, for example, in the downloading of materials, of sources, of texts, of ideas, in order to even be able to approach the writing process and to want that world and expression to exist in a heightened form, and in a heightened form that reflects our imagination in relation to this, alternative universe that we're creating. And so there was very close attention paid to language in our film. We did everything from, creating expressions that people use to greet each other in the film, which is unanimous goldmine. We created expressions. We tried to play with the way in which people communicate, and of course, there's layers to that. Even in that, for me, I was writing in English. Our film is in Kinyarwanda, Kirundi, Swahili, French, and a bit of Lingala, and English. I can speak English and French. The other languages, the majority of the film is in languages I don't speak. The translation process, the communion with other poets and musicians and translating, all of this was like a sort of sacred ceremony in terms of what we're gifted with on the screen as a result of the attention that we paid to that language, and playing with how do these people communicate. And then yes, the excitement of people being able to, as Anisia said, hear these languages, which of course I'm sure we can relate to here as well, because when we talk about the colonial influence on cinema, for example, like when you look at African cinema, you may not imagine that there's a strong colonial influence in how many francophone, places that were colonized by the French films are made, and that, if they accept money from France, the film has to be in French. And you would go, oh, so they speak French in Senegal, without acknowledging the indigenous languages, the Wolof, the Bambara, the indigenous languages. And we wanted this film to be in the indigenous languages, that are spoken there, which also meant that there was money that we could not accept, right? The same way that people may not be as familiar, people outside of Mexico may not be familiar with the indigenous languages that are spoken and are still alive in this culture, because what exits the country is primarily in Spanish. Or English, And so that fight for language, that fight for poetry, is a beautiful aspect of the film. But I really want to include the visual language of the film in this, when we talk about language as well, because the visual expression, the way, there's a reason why it was so important, I felt, for Anisia to be the one to shoot Neptune Frost, because of the visual language of the film. The film is a visual, expression medium, and so that too was crucial in terms of language. So yeah. It's something we fought for, worked over, chiseled down to its barest necessities, edited like we edit poems, got rid of the waste and the unnecessary aspects, and found the kernel of language that could speak to and through the medium, and hopefully everybody would be able to connect with that. So.
Gracias, Saul.
I want to say that for me, in making this film, there were many considerations. But before that, before I forget, one of the things that Saul was talking about, and one of the things that I love, one of the 1,000 things that I love about Neptune Frost, is how it really goes into opening like dimensions over and over, and portals, and I feel like that's very, to me personally, that's something that I connected to so much, because I mean we're talking about within this how do you call it? Oh my God, I'm sorry. Anyways, I'll get back to that. But in terms of what's happening with the environment, it's like, look, I mean, this is a plant. It's a beautiful plant, just like all of the sacred plants around the world. You know, what's happening right now is simply, and one of the things that I felt I wanted to create space, you know, and for consideration, is the fact that, you know, it's the single crop economy that is being developed around that area. This is the area where I grew up, and what leads to single crop economies is not just the environment. There are a lot of political, social forces that lead into single crop economies. I wanted to again open up this space for that consideration. But since we're talking about the environment, and the environment is one other aspect, you know, but also um, our lakes are drying. These are lakes that I grew up with. These are lakes that are 15 minutes from where I grew up. You know, we used to go every weekend. You know, weddings. You know, whatever. Any social thing, those were the lakes, and now those lakes are gone. So that was one of the huge things that I wanted to address, and water being something that sort of reverberates, you know, throughout the film. The and talking about dimensions, opening that dimension and relationship to water, even to the fable, to the myth, to the to all those myths, to that myth that sort of runs through the whole film. You know, it's about an old imam that has, you know, reached a very old age, and at his old age, fear enters him. And so in a dream, he's told to go and find the water of eternal life. And so, I mean, this is the thing. He goes on a journey to find that water of eternal life. And I, you know, in this space, I wanted to, again, consider what that means today. You know, what are those waters of eternal life that we're talking about in a way? You know, what does that signify today? And kind of, you know, bring that, you know, past and presence in dialogue. Because just as you see the old man with Muhammad, you know, the kid, it's the confrontation with the old and the new energies that are looking for something. So yeah, I think that's how in the film the theme of water runs through.
Gracias, Jessica. Just to add something for the question, for Neptune Frost, I mentioned the coltan mining, but I would also like you to talk us a little bit, or to include your some opinion of technology recycling.
I'm gonna continue what Jessica was saying, that I found like close in between our two films, and it's she has a way of filming and bringing us inside the material, inside the water. I think that's what I felt watching her film, is that the ecology, the cat, the water, all those things, she has a way of making us go inside of it and see how we are water, how we are cat, how we are, you know, all those things that she touches. And I think in Neptune Frost is also a matter of going inside those minerals. There is a movement that I feel related in what you were asking about ecology, to go and try to extract or to make material of the inside of those elements. And so yeah, I just wanted to to give to share what I felt watching Faya Dayi with those those people being in the smoke, in the water, and it made me feel inside the.
And then in regards to your question in terms of Colton and technology, you know, basically, you know, we learned of two things at the same time. On one hand, at the conception of this project, we were just starting to learn about coltan and cobalt and the precious minerals that are in all of our smartphones, laptops, drones, etc., and where they are sourced, 85% of which is sourced in Central Africa. And we were also learning about e-waste camps, okay, which is where our technology goes to die. Because of course you want the latest cell phone, you want the latest laptop, and so where do these old computers go? And so these planes come in with all of these old computer parts, and they dump them in villages, well, in waste camps that are the size of villages, where people scavenge for the copper, the wires, and all of this stuff. And when those planes leave, they leave with those minerals that are mined next door and bring them to the places where our technology is made. We wanted to create a story that says, we are the technology. We wanted to create a story that says, well, look, if these minerals are sourced here on this land where we walk, eat, drink, make love, bury our dead, you know, maybe the power in these minerals, maybe the power doesn't come from these minerals, but the power itself comes from us. We've buried our dead here, we've done everything here, and it's our power, our ancestral power that is in these minerals that is sourcing this, you know, worldwide wireless communication. We are the power. And we wanted a story that reflected that. And that was the, you know, that was the goal in terms of speaking about technology. Of course, we wanted to, you know, approach the more practical realities, you know, as we mentioned in the film, that, you know, over 70% of mining companies are based in Canada. You know, there's all these realities. And I know Mexico knows this really well because, you know, Mexico also has a lot of minerals, and we know what happens when you live in a land that is rich with resources. You know, we know who arrives, we know how they arrive, we know the weapons they arrive with, we know how they treat the indigenous, we know, and it's not just coltan, it's not just cobalt, it's cotton, it's sugar, it's gold, it's iron, it's copper, it's, you know, it's coffee, it's all of these things that the entire world, you know, or the Western world takes for granted, but it's all sourced primarily on indigenous lands, right? And so we wanted to find a creative way to talk about that because justice is a huge part of the ecology, of the ecological system, right? And so how do you approach that creatively without it being, just facts and statistics? Our film was an approach, was to say the powers within us, you know, and what happens when the people wake up to their power.
Yeah, all what you are telling is, in a way, I feel is incarnated in this collective of hackers, you know, of Neptune Frost, and something that is very, very captivating for me, and because, you know, this film was one of my most extreme experiences of the last year. I mean, when I saw because there are many things happening there in Baroquism, like that is not common, you know, to be exposed to something like that. And by the way, I feel that as an act of generosity from you guys to put all that in the film, not only conceptual but formally. But one thing that I find kind of captivating is that within this fight and this that is incarnated in this collective of hackers, is also the way you guys included the fight against the binary system, you know, not only in terms of sexuality or of genre, but in a general way, because we live in a binary system that affects everything. No? So I would like you to give us your vision about that, and how did you imagine all this? No?
Well, the beauty of the creative process for me is in connecting dots, you know? Because, as you said, we live in this binary system, right? I'm from the United States, and in the United States, some will say, well, everything is black and white. And then you have people say, you know, it's not just black and white. There's a spectrum of experiences, there's a spectrum of realities, you know? And so this happens with ethnicity, and this is not simply in the United States, right? This happens with so much, and so by focusing on technology, it allowed us to kind of hack into this idea of binary, because of course there's the coding of our, you know, the programming, the 010101 binary coding that is a part of all of our, you know, programming in our software and what have you. Simultaneously, we were dealing with drums and rhythm, and thinking of that as coding as well, right? And so with musically, because for me the approach to the writing of the film was music first, and what I was after sonically was polyrhythm, was the ghost rhythm, the sound between the sounds. Like, how do you you know, find those vortexes, those portals that allow you to kind of ride the rhythm in a way that brings it out in a new way, right? And so, but yes, simultaneously, there were, as you mentioned, Black Lives Matter, but you know, there was a lot of discussions going on in the public forum where, you know, as pertains to gender, what have you, where we were also talking about binary programming in relation to that, and we were like, yeah, that's a part of it. That's, you know, it all belonged to, in many senses, the same idea, or rooted in the same thing that we were trying to break. You know, this patriarchal, hetero Christian normative, you know, the keywords, all of these, you know, in this thing that we were trying to break. Once we approached it from any of those angles, whether it was from the music, whether it was from the coding, whether it was from gender, whether any of these things, they all kind of fed and bled into each other. And so then it was a matter of just having fun with that, right? And yeah, you.
I do think that in the building of the character of Neptune, one of the reason there is that fluidity and that these characters find itself at intersections of many things is also related to the desire of bringing ancestral codes, ancestral, you know, ways of thinking that question, be it by the Dogon who, you know, discovered that 01010101, or be it by folk tales in places, and I know here too because I saw it yesterday in the museum, where thousands of years ago people were living with those tales without any judgment, right? And if you talk about, you know, what colonialism and neocolonialism did to the places in terms of exploitation. You have to talk also about what they did in terms of mind and moral. Colonization, right? And I do think that the fluidity, the intersectionalities, all those things, even the, white, blah, 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 patriarchal, comes with colonialism and stays with neocolonialism. And so people can remember sometimes that they used to think differently also, that we can deprogram ourselves and find references to to that deprogramming. It's not like, oh, it comes from nowhere. No, people are used to those stories since a very long time ago, but the programming made those beings being problematic for the powers. So it's also in the same idea as the exploitation of minerals, as the exploitation of, people. It's also
And it was
related.
also important to decolonialize genre. You know, my frustration, for example, with science fiction films is that it always comes from this Occidental perspective, this fear, this projected fear of somebody's gonna come and colonize us. And like every fucking single time, they're gonna come and colonize us. And I'm like, is that really imagination? Or just fear? I see the spaceships, but if that's your fear, because we also, refer to these aliens as higher intelligence, but they always come with war and weapons. I'm like, how is that higher intelligence if it's war and weapons, So we also sought to decolonize the genre in terms of that, and not operating off of that fear of somebody coming and doing something to us, rather by detangling those things that have been done and saying, that's what we're playing with here. How do we detangle this shit? Take me out of it. I have this power. I don't even need this device. I was communicating wirelessly with drums. You know what I'm saying? Like, take me out of it. So yeah, that was a part of the process too.